Wild times right now in college football, man. Very, very wild times. And everybody wants to blame somebody. You blame the quarterback who is apparently going to leave his school, or not leave his school, redshirt and leave his team for the duration of the 2024 season. Or you want to blame the folks that are in charge of the NIL funds, but I think maybe there's somebody else that maybe deserves a little bit more blame, as this whole story is a little bit murky. If you don't know what I'm talking about, stay tuned. We'll talk about it right now. Welcome into the Hard Count. It is Wednesday, September 25th, 2024. Got a lot to jump into. I just mentioned the Matthew Sluka situation at UNLV has taken the headlines by the throat this morning in the college football world. We'll unpack that together. I'll give you my thoughts. What we usually do here on Wednesdays, though, is unpack our college football playoff tiers. This is the last week now, too, that we're going to call that segment Playoff Tiers. Good news for those of y'all that have submitted phenomenal titles for that segment. So this is the last week. It'll be Playoff Tiers. Stay tuned for the name of what that will be called going forward. Who's QB1, or who should be QB1? Because there's a couple of key programs out there, very visible programs with big brands like an Auburn, like a Texas A&M, and Oklahoma, who's kind of made a decision there, Michigan as well. Who should be the guy for those schools going forward? I'll give you my 2 cents. And then also Georgia, Alabama is going to be a blockbuster. I cannot wait for that game, man. Like, that game to me, we've had circled for a very long time. When we looked at the college football schedule for this season, it's finally here. And we gave you our prediction in that game yesterday, but I want to unpack the stakes around that game, because sometimes that's almost as much worth talking about as the game itself. So we'll break all that down. Glad to have you all a part of this, man. Make sure you are subscribed if you haven't already. Make sure you are subscribed via podcast feed if you're listening on Apple and Spotify. We appreciate you for that, man. A lot going on. A lot going on right now. Mostly on the field, but we got more to talk about right now off the field. UNLV quarterback Matthew Sluka. It breaks last night. He puts out a statement and says he will be using his red shirt. I want to read his statement in its entirety so we have all the context possible. It says, quote, "I have decided to utilize my red shirt year and will not be playing in any additional games this season. I committed to UNLV based on certain representations that were made to me which were not upheld after I enrolled. Despite discussions, it became clear that these commitments would not be fulfilled in the future. I wish my teammates the best of luck this season and hope for the continued success of the program." Misspelled program there, has an A instead of a U, but nonetheless, we keep on moving forward. This is tough, man, because it's not like UNLV is just muddling through and they're at a 2-2 season. Like, they're a top 25 team right now. They got 2 Power 4 conference wins right now over Kansas and Houston. We do our college football playoff picture rankings every single Sunday, and right now UNLV for the past 2 Sundays has been the G5 rep for the 12 seed. Like, they're fighting for a playoff spot. And so to have this news break, you're like, wait a second. Like, what is going on? Some more context. Matthew Sluka transferred over to UNLV from Holy Cross. Now, Pete Thamel added into this discussion, in some ways sort of backing up what Matthew Sluka says in his statement. He says, former UNLV quarterback Matthew Sluka, his NIL representation, Marcus Cromartie of Equity Sports, told ESPN that Sluka was verbally promised a minimum of $100,000 from UNLV assistant coach for transferring there. None of that money was paid per Cromartie. And then Pete Nakos, I believe, confirms this. I want to make sure I have this totally right for all of y'all. Pete Nakos confirms this report from Pete Thamel, and the way that it sounds, you're going to go ahead and follow the On3 socials, the way that it sounds is he allegedly only received $3,000 for relocation. So there's a lot of reports out there. Some folks are saying that Matthew Sluka walked in after UNLV started having success and demanded more money. What's true, what's not true here? I'm going off those reports right now. The reality is we may never know. Andy and Ari do a show that's on right before this on the On3 YouTube channel, and I thought they did a really great job of laying this out for all of us. There's essentially 3 scenarios here. The first scenario is that everything that's being reported from Pete Thamel is in fact correct. Was promised X, did not receive that money, so now he's like, hey, I was promised this. What would you do if you were trying to work a job and then your paycheck never actually came? Yeah, you see where this whole thing is going. The other possibility, the second scenario there that Andy and Ari laid out is, okay, he essentially was promised this, a certain amount of money, that was met, they have success, he wants more money, and then he gets into this situation. That's the second scenario. The other scenario here, which is one that I think is flying wildly under the radar here, the third scenario, is that maybe he has success. Everything's all kosher when it comes to the NIL front with UNLV, but then some other schools start to take notice and say, hey, maybe Matthew Sluka could come play for us and help our program out, get us to be a college football playoff contender. Full transparency, that would feel a little bit more far-fetched to me based on what Matthew Sluka has done to this point in the season. Not to knock the guy, but he is transferring over from the FCS level and currently has a completion percentage of 44%. Not telling you he hasn't done what's been asked of him to allow UNLV to be successful, but I'm just saying now the idea that he was poached and that's why he's deciding to redshirt so he can save his eligibility to go play somewhere else, that to me feels a little bit more like a stretch. But again, very, very possible, and we don't know what's actually true here. So my thoughts on this are kind of evolving as we get more information. If what Pete Thanuel's reporting is true, what I just said about that whole situation is exactly how I feel. If you were promised a certain amount of money to do a job, which, let's be transparent here, that's what college football is becoming right now for these certain athletes, and then you were not receiving that certain amount of money for doing that job, yeah, at some point in time, I'm going to have to do something to protect myself. I'm not going to keep coming into work if I'm not getting paid. We would do that for this job, but that's another discussion for another time. But if it's a situation where truly he is coming in and asking for more money and saying, well, hey, we have this success, I want X, Y, and Z more dollars, otherwise I'm not playing, then that's just a terrible scenario. And this whole thing, honestly, regardless of who you blame here, whether it be the powers that be around NIL for UNLV or whether it be Matthew Sluka, this whole situation is just terrible. Because think about it this way. If you're a senior at UNLV, you've put real sweat equity into that football program. You came back for another year if you're a redshirt senior. You decided to play one more year of college football, and you're having this run right now. You're undefeated. You have a chance to go to the college football playoff, something that was never possible before in your time there. And one of the most, arguably the most crucial part of your football team, your quarterback, isn't playing anymore. Think about just the gut punch that is to the teammates, to everyone else involved in this thing. One of the things I love about college football and football period is it is the greatest team sport on the face of the planet. You are extremely dependent on everyone else doing their job and showing up and being accountable. And so whether it's, again, the powers that be from the collective or whether it be Matthew Sluka, whoever you want to blame here, the situation sucks because of the other people that now have to deal with the fallout of it, man. So, I'll root for UNLV going forward. Now, I hope they go on a tear. I hope they end up balling out the rest of the way and make the college football playoff because of this situation, man. Just a tough, tough deal to be dealt. At the opening of this live show, I said maybe, just maybe, we shouldn't blame Matthew Sluka or the people involved with the money at UNLV. Because at the end of the day now, why is this happening? Because of the lack of structure we have in place around NIL. Everyone is just operating within the lack of rules that we have here. Right? You don't blame Matthew Sluka, you don't blame UNLV or whoever's involved with the money if there's rules in place here that say, hey, this contract has to be agreed upon, has to be signed, has to have X, Y, and Z signed on the dotted line. If there was more structure here, this wouldn't be going on during the season. And so if you hate this, a lot like how I hate this, again, I'm not trying to blame anybody else here. I'm not trying to tell you who's at fault here when it comes to UNLV or the quarterback. But if you hate this, the good news is this is probably going to be a catalyst for change. All it takes is one crazy thing to happen before we start getting rules in place to negate crazy things from continuing to happen. Because make no mistake now, Matthew Sluka's situation will not be the last one that we see of this nature until there's real parameters put in place. Blame the adults in charge of the system. Don't blame the people that are operating within the system right now. So hate this for Matthew Sluka, hate this for UNLV, hate this for the team that's in that locker room at UNLV. And we'll see what happens going forward, man. Again, we don't have a ton of concrete information, a lot of he said, she said, and we'll figure this out as it goes. I'd be surprised if we don't get a Netflix doc out of this, dude. With how quick Netflix was in the Connor Stallion situation, I'd be surprised if we don't get something out of this when it comes to Matthew Sluka and UNLV. Within the next year would be my guess. But again, hate this for college football, hate this for the parties that are involved, man. Bad deal. Bad deal. One more thought I have on this. as we move along here. Not included in that segment necessarily, just because it's it's a little bit too optimistic of me. But like when I saw this whole thing come out, I'm a little bit like, is this really going to happen? Like we're talking about Las Vegas. There is money to go around here. You got Bishop Gorman just down the street there. That's a massive high school. There is money in Las Vegas. We can't just, make this go away. Okay, hey, tempers escalate, put out a statement, things get a little bit crazy. Somebody can't just put up the money that was essentially agreed upon. If that's the case, we can't make this go away. We got freaking college football playoff run going on right now. We can't make this work. That was my original knee-jerk reaction. As this thing progresses and it becomes a little bit, at least it feels like it becomes more and more loud around that situation. Feels like maybe that was a little bit too idealistic of me to think, but we'll see what happens. The Hard Count brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks Daily Fantasy, made easy to use, easy to withdraw your winnings. If you use code HARDCOUNT, $5 in lineups just for playing. Even if we don't win, $5 in lineups just for playing gets you $50 in promo funds. So again, use that code HARDCOUNT, to get you some free credit to work with there, some promo funds. But even maybe as importantly, the folks at Prize Picks, they watch what referrals we get. They watch who uses code HARDCOUNT. So using that code, a great way to support the show, a great way to know to let the people at Prize Picks know that we got some sickos. We got a freaking army of y'all that are dialed in for the program, and we appreciate y'all using that code and making it happen. So, shouts out to y'all using that code, and shouts out to Prize Picks for bringing the show to y'all. I'll play a little bit later in the show, actually, that we'll have around the Georgia-Alabama game. So lock in for that one. All right, this is the last time we will call this segment Playoff Tiers. A new name to this segment is coming this time next week. We are still kind of finalizing the graphics for it and still getting that all situated, but this is going to look a little bit different this time next week, but a lot of the verbiage will stay the same. If you're new to this segment, this is our playoff tiers. This is not projections or predictions. To me, this is where things are right now when you look at the college football playoff landscape. So you got your playoff penthouse, teams we feel real good about. You got bubble central, teams that were like, I could see a path. I'm not saying they're out of it. I'm not saying they're necessarily right there in it either. And then you got the teams in the waiting line, all right? Trying to find a way in. Outside looking in right now, might need to pick up the pace a little bit if they want to make the college football playoff. And then we got the G5 party, which are the folks just having a good time right now in G5 country and have a chance to be in the college football playoff now with this expanded model. So let's start with the playoff penthouse. Again, not predictions, not like a numerical ranking. We do that on Sundays, so make sure you're subscribed right here so you don't miss it. But this is the teams that I feel pretty good about right now as we go into week 5 of the college football season as it pertains to the college football playoff. Texas, no Quinn Ewers, no problem against UL Monroe. Arch Manning just is out there dealing. They are the most complete team that I've seen to this point in the college football season in America to this point. All right. Also, if you were questioning if Quinn Ewers was going to be the guy long-term there, Steve Sarkisian did a lot leading into that game for Arch Manning, being the starter against UL Monroe to kind of turn that volume down. But it's very clear, too, by how his teammates talk about him and how Quinn Ewers is interacting on the sideline with those guys, getting them juiced up, being a lot more vocal than we've ever seen him be throughout the college career that he's had. Credit Steve Sarkisian for championing and empowering Quinn Ewers to be that vocal leader, and credit Quinn Ewers for stepping up to the plate and for taking on that leadership role in the massive way that he has. So Texas, what they did against Michigan, I think is still the best win of the college football season to this point. They're absolutely in the college football playoff penthouse, and like I said, multiple weeks now in a row, I mean, they just got their feet kicked up on the ottoman. It's a good vibe. All right, Georgia, major opportunity this week. And I'm not really so curious about the roster for Georgia because I think you look at the guys on the sheet of paper that has the numbers and weights and heights, like a lot of 4- and 5-star guys, right? Like Georgia, if it's purely a beauty pageant, they're up there with anyone else in America, if not winning the whole darn thing based on the eye test. However, those teams that end up winning national championships under Kirby Smart got a little something extra under the hood. And we see that something extra under the hood when they have a letdown game. They had that letdown game against Kentucky, took a 1-point dub in Lexington, got a bye week. How do they bounce back? How do they respond? if they're anything like previous elite Kirby Smart teams, then they'll respond in a massive way this week in Tuscaloosa. And that's the next team we want to talk about, man. Hey, hand up. We missed Alabama last week when we went through this segment. They were on the graphic. They didn't make it to the show notes for whatever reason. But Alabama, they've been in the playoff penthouse, never left the playoff penthouse, regardless of what I have or haven't said about them on the show. I'm curious with them around the Kalen DeBoer factor here heading into this game. Because what we said in our prediction is absolutely true about previous Alabama teams under Nick Saban. Like, they've always had this main event, big game just edge to them. Like, you felt good if you were an Alabama Crimson Tide fan. Every single game you walked into, didn't matter what the spread was, even though usually you were favored. Didn't matter where it was. Didn't matter who you had healthy. You felt good with Nick Saban running the show. You were going to have more than a decent chance to win that football game. And for Kalen DeBoer, that was a big talking point when he took the Alabama job. Hey, is he cut out for life in the SEC? Is he cut out for the big stage, the bright lights? Different ball game now. And you look at the spring game being a great example of that. You have your A-Day, and it is a sold-out Bryant-Denny. Have your spring game at Washington, no shade to the Huskies, but like you might get a smattering of folks that are Washington football fans, and maybe you get a few families show up to the game to watch their kids. But like, you hear what I'm saying. Different beast. How does he handle this spot? Excited to watch. But Alabama, for the record here, Georgia and Bama, whoever loses that game does not mean they're automatically out of the playoff penthouse, just so we're on the same page there. So Alabama, definitely still in the playoff penthouse. Now, Ohio State, kind of quiet out there in Columbus. If you're a Buckeye fan, like, that's exactly what you want to this point in the college football season. Haven't played anybody. No news is good news. And the game against Marshall, kind of a showcase for the Buckeyes. It was on Big Noon and played with their food a little bit. Hey, I'm cool with you playing with your food so long as you eventually eat it. You know what I'm saying? Like, got a little girl due here in November. That'll be my rule for her. It's my rule for the Buckeyes too. At some point in time now, it's going to be about Will Howard elevating Ohio State. And he hasn't had to just yet. But I think in those games against Oregon, against Michigan, in the college football playoff, you will look to him to be the difference. And Kyle McCord last year didn't have a bad stat line over the course of his season in Columbus. It was more so the big moments. Like, people talk a lot about Ohio State's defense over the course of the past couple of years. Last year, they were statistically really good. One of the top 10 defenses in America. Even against Michigan. People go back to the Michigan game and say, yeah, well, Michigan kind of bullied them. I mean, did they? Ohio State, go back to that last drive against Michigan defensively. If Michigan scores a touchdown, I mean, that game's out of reach. The Ohio State defense holds them to a field goal, gets the ball back for the offense with a minute flat to go. If your quarterback is able to elevate your offense, get you down the field, get you a touchdown, that's game over. And we're talking about Ohio State and probably Kyle McCord still being at Ohio State. And talk about them in a very different light, I think, going into this season. So it's about Will Howard. It will always be about Will Howard. And I cannot wait to see how he progresses when they play better competition here going forward. Miami, they're in the playoff penthouse. They're extra scary to me if I'm just a college football national title contender or in that discussion, because I think Miami is that. And that sounds a little bit funny to say out loud because of where Miami has been the last couple of years. But this is a group now that is a lot more versatile than they're being given credit for, because Cam Ward gets the headlines, and he's a guy that I think is very firmly in that Heisman Trophy discussion, if not the leader for it right now. Think about the aerial attack. They're a 55% pass team. You got Shannon Dawson, who's an air raid disciple. This is a tough football team. Like, defensively, I don't care who they have or haven't played. They are top 10 in yards allowed per a play. Yards allowed per a play, not a game, per a play. Physically up front, they have just been bullies when it comes to running the football. 6.2 yards a carry. Some of that is definitely based on the looks they get against their high-octane pass game, but like, they got a dude in Damian Martinez who runs behind his shoulder pads, and they got an offense which is the head coach of Mario Cristobal, and the way that he gets down, the offensive line is going to be a point of emphasis for him. They've now built that, and they've been able to reap the rewards of that. So Miami, the styles they can play, so long as they don't have a letdown competitively, they're going to be able to, I think, compete with every single team in college football. Now, will they win the whole darn thing? We'll see, but they're absolutely, for me, in the playoff penthouse going into Week 5. Now, Ole Miss, people push back on Ole Miss and saying they haven't played anybody. I don't care. I really don't care. You play who's in front of you. And honestly, look at Oregon, and this is not to dunk on Oregon, but Oregon also hasn't really played anybody either. Boise State's probably the best, or in that conversation to be the best G5 team in America right now. Took them to a 3-point game. Still, it's a G5 team. Oregon hasn't really looked like Oregon until they played Oregon State. Like it took a few weeks for them to get rolling. Ole Miss, they got a lot of transfers too. A lot of pieces they're trying to fit together too. And all they've done is absolutely roll. Now, I cannot wait for them to play Kentucky this week. Kentucky's an interesting test for them because of the way that they're going to, I think, try and take the air out of the football there, try and limit possessions for Jackson Dart. They are allowing right around 12-ish points a game. I think it might even be a little bit lower than that given the stats continuing to update. They're a physical outfit as Kentucky. 60% run the football team. Okay, so how Ole Miss handles that now, that's been the talking point for us all offseason with Ole Miss. They're so much better up front. They've got better bodies on the D-line. Well, we're going to see. We're going to see against, like I said, a physical Kentucky outfit. This is going to test the pro mindset for Ole Miss here because you got Kentucky, but then it starts to really ramp up a little bit. At South Carolina, at LSU, you got a bye, and you got Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Georgia. So say what you want about Ole Miss right now. They're going to earn their keep if they end up finding their way into the college football playoff. Based on how they're humming offensively right now, like I don't penalize them for not playing anybody. Over 600 yards of offense a game and allowing 3.5 yards of play defensively. That'll work. That'll work just fine. A new addition to the playoff penthouse here. How about Tennessee? Tennessee fans, you were saying, put us in the penthouse, put us in the penthouse, put us. You're there. You're 110% here, especially with how you showed up and showed out in Norman, Oklahoma with your quarterback's first road start. Showed up in a massive, massive way. And it was how you won that game too, right? Offensively, it was good. Josh Heupel pulled the reins back a little bit. 25 points, probably need more than that going forward to end up where you want to end up against the Bamas and the Georgias. But I think there's two thoughts for me. There is the overwhelmingly positive, and there's the sobering. I'm going to start with the sobering so we can end with the positive. If Oklahoma and Tennessee, in that game against Tennessee, if Oklahoma turns both those fumbles from Nico Iamaleava into points, the tune around the offense, the tune around Tennessee, I don't know if it changes drastically, but it's a little bit more flat. It's not quite as fired up as you were heading into this game. Because credit Tennessee's defense. Like, they showed up in a big way, like I already mentioned, and they were the reason why you won that football game. Now, I would say this, the positive, as I mentioned, is this is a team now, if they trend in the way that they can trend, have all the makings of winning the SEC. I'm not backing off that statement. They have the makings to win the SEC. Now, makings does not mean that's what you are right now. It means you have the ingredients. We'll say it again. Generational quarterback in Nico Iamaleava. I think you have a defensive line now that can compete with the Bamas and Georgias of the world. You have skill players that I think are ultimately what Josh Heupel needs from a quantity perspective to win his matchups. Like, this is a team that can actually lean on their defense now. You couldn't say that a couple years ago. You couldn't. 2022, it was a magical ride, but your defense had a lot of issues. You don't have those same issues this year, from what we can tell. So the makings and what they're going to be, two different things. But Tennessee, welcome to the penthouse, and we're glad to have you here. Enjoy your stay. It is not, leases or rent is due every single week now, just so we're clear on that when it comes to Tennessee. Last team in the playoff penthouse for me, Utah. And we got a lot of pushback every week putting Utah in the penthouse. They're not this, they're not that. I just saw that team go to Stillwater, Oklahoma, one of the top teams in the Big 12. Salty, one of the top returning production teams in college football in Oklahoma State, without Cam Rising in the game. Won that game. So when Cam Rising gets back, and it's a funny phrase to say because we'll see when that eventually happens. You hope it's sooner rather than later. They're making it sound like he's not that far away for the folks in Salt Lake City, but to win that game in Stillwater with a backup quarterback told me everything I needed to know. Kansas State lost to BYU. We'll talk about them a little bit later. Utah, belt to behind as of right now for the rest of the Big 12. So Utah, for me, the team that I'm picking to win the Big 12, did at the beginning of the season, still picking them, and got a few more teams in the Penthouse there that we'll unpack at the end of this segment a little bit later. So let's move out to Bubble Central. And this is where things get a little bit more spicy here, all right? Disclaimer, at the top of this thing, remember now, 12-team playoff, not the BCS, not the 4-team playoff. One loss does not change the outcome of your season to this point in the year, all right? So a perfect segue into that is USC. And people are going to push USC on the bubble. You just see what they lost to Michigan at. Michigan ran for almost 300 yards against them. I understand that. Bad loss. Doesn't mean USC isn't still a really freaking good team. We saw that against LSU. You go back and actually watch that game, USC, quite frankly, a couple of run fits away from winning that football game. Now, a couple of run fits is still a couple of run fits. That made the difference. But you cannot tell me that defense isn't improved. You also can't tell me the path isn't there. With Miller Moss and the ice water in his veins, man, here's the deal. You go 2-1 in these 3 games and win the games you're supposed to win around it. Penn State, Nebraska, Notre Dame. 2-1, you handle business 2-1, you're in the college football playoff as a 10-2 Big Ten team. And feel pretty confident in saying that. Also worth noting, Penn State, Nebraska, Notre Dame, all in the Coliseum. Okay? All in the Coliseum. And people say, well, that's not really home field advantage because we've seen the overhead shots of the Coliseum kind of not really being too full and just having a smattering of folks here and there. You've seen that when they're 7-5. Tell you what, now, the folks in Los Angeles, they'll get dialed in if USC is in the college football playoff discussion. And that will be a home atmosphere, and that will be home field advantage for USC. I've seen it with my own eyes. I've been to games where USC is dialed into the nth degree, and it's an experience, all right? So we'll leave that there. USC for us on the bubble as of right now. Now, Oregon, they were off a bye. I need to see it against UCLA now, Oregon. I need to see it. Looked great against Oregon State. I need them to look how they're supposed to look against the teams they're supposed to look a certain way against. And UCLA is one of those teams. So for Oregon now, is it a situation where the light bulb has come on and the bye week propels them even further and we're firing on all cylinders right now? Or is it a situation where, okay, we look good, take our foot off the gas, exhale, and then we go from there? You hope it's the first option there if you're an Oregon fan. Penn State, on the bubble for me. I keep asking for validating filters from them when it comes to who they play against. No shade and looking the way that you looked against Kent State. I mean, hey, handle business, do what you do. Bowling Green also, that game being close, looked a lot better because of how they played Texas A&M. Bowling Green played them pretty close. But for Penn State, man, they got a really interesting 3-week stretch here. They got ranked Illinois coming to town, top 20 Illinois now, coming to Happy Valley. You got UCLA, and then you're at USC. So if you're a Penn State fan watching the show and saying, hey, put us up, like, hey, why are we on the bubble here, brother? We're undefeated. Coach Koltanecki got the ice cream offense working a certain way. I hear you. Handle business these next 3 weeks, you will very firmly be in the college football playoff penthouse. Mark my words. For Missouri, man, they're in the bubble again this week. I keep waiting for that light bulb moment out of them. The Vanderbilt game, it took them overtime, and Vandy might be pretty solid now. Needed a little extra surge a couple weeks ago to beat Boston College. I'm not down on either Boston College or Vanderbilt, but I am a little bit looking at Missouri and saying, okay, with what you have on that roster, with Luther Burden, with Brady Cook, with all the production back on offense, like I need something to get excited about if I'm watching Missouri football. Something where I point at that product on the field and say, yep, that's a college football playoff team. Haven't seen that just yet. Haven't seen that. To be fair, I think there is something to Missouri potentially playing to the logo, which, I mean, hey, handle business against who you got to handle business against. And when you see the A&M logo, if you turn it on, great. When you see Alabama, you turn it on, great. However, playing to the logo to me is a lot like studying for a test the day before. You can do it only so often, and then at some point in time, that's going to bite you. Because to be clear now, Vanderbilt could have keyword beaten them. They didn't, still in the bubble, but we'll see what Missouri does here going forward. Michigan got a lot of pushback about having them waiting in line and having them in this playoff discussion. Michigan 10-2 will be in the college football playoff. Now, doing that requires them to split Oregon and Ohio State, so we'll see if that happens. Is what they did against USC sustainable? Throwing for 30-ish yards? No, it's not sustainable. However, I think the folks in that building in Ann Arbor understand that, and very clearly they're trying to find a Alex Orji offense 2.0 to try and build off what they did. But y'all, like, it's pretty clear who Michigan wants to be. It's always been clear. Double down, run the football. We're tougher than you. For that reason, we're going to beat you. And if that works the way they want it to work, they'll be in the college football playoff. The path, again, is still a little bit concerning for me if I'm a Michigan fan. But I think the Michigan fans understand that. I think they understand where they are right now when it comes to where this team is and how it's built. But I'm excited to see Michigan, man, because, again, one bad loss to Texas. Texas keeps on rolling, and Michigan, I'd be surprised if they weren't in this discussion for the college football playoff a little bit longer. One more team here, also elevating like Michigan from the waiting in line part of this tier up to the Bubble Central tier, and that's Clemson. We said this in a one-off video on the On3 YouTube channel. Clemson offensively for a while there, at least last year, felt like Firefest. And if you know the Firefest doc, then you understand what I'm saying here. It felt like, okay, you got a 5-star quarterback. You got a genius OC coming over from a national title contending team in TCU who elevated their quarterback, and we're going to be off to the races here. We're going to score a lot of points. We're going to be explosive again. And then last year was what it was, and you're one of the worst teams in America when it comes to yards per pass, and you're like, hang on a second. We were told there was going to be a party. We show up here, and there's essentially like tents for us here, and there's no food, and this is just a bad deal. That was the Firefest. However, though, seeing what they did against NC State, scoring almost 60 points again, they scored over 60 against App State, seeing Cade Klubnik pushing the ball downfield with confidence, seeing him have 8.7 yards an attempt, you felt like Andy Dufresne in Shawshank Redemption, spoiler, when he gets out of the prison, feels the rain on his skin for the first time. It's like, hallelujah. This is the Garrett Riley offense we signed up for. And if this continues offensively for Clemson, like that defense, I have no reservations about them. That defense is going to hold it down. If the offense is explosive, Clemson may very well be in the ACC championship. Now, Clemson, what's left for them is Louisville and then at Virginia Tech in back-to-back weeks. They finished with South Carolina, but no Miami and no Syracuse for the Tigers. Everyone left Clemson for dead after the Georgia game. We told you, we said, hey, it's game one. That's Georgia. Give it some time. Clemson, don't look now. They are very much alive when it comes to the college football playoff discussion. So that's Bubble Central. Let's take a trip out to the folks waiting in line right now for the college football playoff. And if you're waitlisted, it doesn't mean you can't get in. I got waitlisted for grad school. Had to have a conversation with the folks that are in power at that certain university. Found a way in. We're good. So if you're waitlisted, maybe you're like me. Maybe you find a way into school. Maybe you find your way into the college football playoff after all. For LSU, man, that's where they are right now. They have a chance to jump back up into this playoff discussion if they beat Ole Miss October 12th. Their path is vicious. We talked about it. The benefit for them, though, with what they have left, they get Ole Miss, Bama, and Oklahoma at home. All right, so you'd much rather play in Death Valley when it comes to playing those teams. We'll see what Oklahoma even is at that point in the year, but I'm just saying now, it's a tough path. It's not going to be easy by any stretch, but if you're LSU, continuing to put that offense together, your heart breaks losing Harold Perkins for the year. I mean, I absolutely hate that for all of college football, especially the folks in Baton Rouge, but we'll see what LSU is here going forward. I wouldn't count them out just yet, especially with how that USC loss could age if USC handles business. Now, Notre Dame, man, I'm worried about them. I have them waitlisted, but I'm concerned. I'm very concerned, especially with Louisville coming to town this week. Will the real Notre Dame please stand up? Please. Looked awesome against A&M. After week one, I was like, boom, check the box, get to the playoff penthouse. I feel great about Notre Dame, especially with their schedule the rest of the way. And then they lose to NIU. Then they're back up. They look great against Purdue, and then they're sloppy against Miami of Ohio. I'm very worried with Louisville coming to town. Very, very worried. Louisville's explosive. The Notre Dame offense has been very haphazard, been very unrhythmic. We'll see if they can put it together, but the inconsistency is what worried me about Riley Leonard coming to Notre Dame. It's what still worries me about the Fighting Irish moving into this week. I want to talk about two Big 12 teams here together, Oklahoma State and Kansas State. are in the same boat to me. We've kind of swapped these two around with Bubble Central. Like, bottom line, Utah is that big dog in the Big 12 right now until proven otherwise. Utah just beat Oklahoma State. Kansas State, I was really high on, but they lost to BYU, and they lost in ugly fashion. You got certain fans of Kansas State talking about things they're going to do with different Mexican food items from your local Taco Bell establishments. However, doesn't mean they're out of it, but you're going to have to find your way to the Big 12 title game. Probably be to Utah, if I had to guess as of today, and that would be the path in. I do not see more than one Big 12 team making the college football playoff. So we'll see what happens there. Louisville, massive opportunity now. Welcome to waiting in line. You can move into the bubble territory if you beat Notre Dame. Now, Louisville's got a tough path, man. They got Miami, at Clemson, at Kentucky. But if you can split Miami and Clemson and then find yourself into the ACC title game and win the ACC, like, hey, you're in the dance there. You're in the dance. I think that's probably the path they have to go about it. But we'll see. I wouldn't be overwhelmingly shocked if a one-loss ACC, conference champ runner-up found their way in. But again, I wouldn't want to leave that to chance. For me, they're waiting in line this week. And then Illinois. A couple new additions to the waiting in line here between Louisville and Illinois. Don't look now. They're making some noise. Undefeated. Beat Nebraska at Nebraska on a national stage. They could get a whole lot more momentum if they go beat Penn State on the road. The Fighting Brett Bielema's. They need this one, and they also have Michigan and at Oregon still on the schedule. We'll see what happens there, but you just get this one. Worry about this one, and then we'll see where we are next week. Illinois, making it tough on the folks in Big Ten country. So that's who we have waiting in line, and then we'll check in on the folks in the G5 right now. A little G5 party going on. Ain't no party like a G5 party, man, because a G5 party do not stop, but it's been a little bit, I don't know if it's stopped at UNLV just yet, but gosh dang, man. The Matthew Sluka stuff throws you for a loop here. What do? You're still a top 25 team, still undefeated, still got 2 Power 4 conference wins to your name. Like, we'll see how much the eye test factors in there. I would say this, Matthew Sluka wasn't exactly lighting the world on fire for UNLV, so I don't think that would give them any issues should they go the rest of their season and win the Mountain West. They host Boise State late October, Friday night. That's going to be huge for pole position in the Mountain West. But UNLV, I think, still the rep for the G5 right now, but we'll see what they do going forward here. Boise State probably feeling better about their chances now against UNLV moving into the post-Matthew Sluka era out there in Las Vegas. They host Washington State this weekend. Massive for all our sickos that watch this show. 10 Eastern kick. Has college football junkie written all over it. That'd be a massive. I know Washington State is technically, I think, an independent this year when you talk about what they or how you evaluate them for the college football playoff. But with the way they're cooking, would do a lot for Boise State in their resume. And again, the only loss Boise State has right now is a 3-point loss to a top 15, top 10, depending on how you want to look at them, Oregon team. James Madison put a thwacking on North Carolina, scored 70 points. James Madison, undefeated. Look at the Dukes now. Keep an eye on them. I'm just saying, they covered for us like a blanket last year. They're doing more than that right now when it comes to G5 territory. Then Liberty, still undefeated, business as usual. I look at them the same way this week as I did last week. You got Caden Salter, and you're going to be a force when it comes to the rest of your schedule as well. The game at App State is really the one that I'm watching, but Liberty, they may be undefeated. It's just a matter of how they look when they finish undefeated, if and when they finish undefeated. So, the playoff tiers for us. Again, this is the last time we're calling it playoff tiers. It'll be called something different next week. Got a lot of suggestions from y'all, but it is as follows. The playoff penthouse, you got Texas, Georgia, Bama, Ohio State, Miami, Ole Miss, Tennessee, and Utah. Do not expect the penthouse to be as full here over the course of the next couple of weeks. All right, it's still pretty packed, but that's the penthouse for you right now. Moving on down to Bubble Central, you got Oregon, need to see more. Penn State, massive opportunity this week against Illinois. Missouri, Michigan, Clemson, and USC. USC's not dead now. Just because they lost to Michigan does not mean they are done. Keep an eye on the folks out there in Los Angeles. And then who's waitlisted right now is LSU, Notre Dame, both Oklahoma State and Kansas State out of the Big 12, Louisville and Illinois. And then for the G5 party, UNLV, I ain't hear no bell. Keep that music playing out there in Las Vegas. Probably not a problem for the folks out there in Las Vegas. Boise State, James Madison, and Liberty all hanging out in G5 territory. And we said this too. We got a lot of pushback around the G5 party not having an NIU, not having a MAC team. I want to see more on Wednesday nights before I put somebody from the MAC into the G5 party, because MACtion could be just Hunger Games all year long. So take of that as you will. Hey, massive one this weekend. Probably the game, not probably, the game of the weekend. Arguably, it could be the game of the college football season at this point. Yeah, Alabama hosting Georgia. What's at stake in this game? What's on the line here? Because I think there's a couple of things that you look at here. There's the optics side, and then there's the 2024 path side for both Georgia and Bama. Like, if Georgia wins, think about the optics. Like, you are the big dog in the conference, and everyone sort of already believes you are the big dog in the conference, regardless of what you thought about Texas or what you say about Alabama. But if you go to Tuscaloosa and beat Alabama, I don't care that Nick Saban's not there. There's no Uno reverse pulling on me here now. There's no, it was this, it was that about Bama. Like, I think you validate a lot of what you thought about Georgia going into the season. Think about the confidence, too. For this team, yes, there's definitely a part of that. But I think even more specifically, I think this game for Carson Beck could be what it was for Quinn Ewers a season ago. Because Quinn Ewers goes into Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and there's still some thoughts around, well, hey, he's a good quarterback, but what is he really? I think Carson Beck has a little bit more momentum behind his career to this point. But we saw last year, Quinn Ewers going into Tuscaloosa and slaying the dragon, like, you could tell he was a different player after that. Like, even what he thought about himself internally, that gave more juice to it. It gave more life to it. I think the same thing can be true for Carson Beck, because he's been consistent. He's been great. I think a lot of folks would say he is arguably in that conversation to be the best quarterback in college football. But when you go do it in Tuscaloosa, this would be like that big game win. This would be that I'm him moment, which I think we need from him going forward. Going from consistent to I'm him, it's a nice little jump that you saw Stetson Bennett make from the first national title to the second national title. You'd want to see Carson Beck make it and make it in this game. Now, for prize picks, we told y'all we had a play coming in this game. His total for rushing yards, Carson Beck, is set at 8.5. He's surpassed that every single game this season, barring something where Alabama gets to him a few times in the backfield. I think he's going to surpass that total. So go ahead and take Carson Beck's with the more on 8.5 rushing yards. Pair that with a Caleb Williams free square and a use code HARDCOUNT, and you're off to the races. So thanks to our folks at Prize Picks for bringing y'all this segment. Now, from a path perspective for Georgia, it's more of a literal sense. It's a little less romantic and exciting when it comes to how you talk about the path, but just like you get some breathing room. You know, in the new SEC, like you still have to go to Texas, still have to go to Ole Miss. Oh, by the way, you play Tennessee, who looks like a SEC title contender right now. Like, this would be really nice to have some breathing room and not tote one loss and then worry about getting a second loss, and then you're 10-2 and you're like, okay, we're kind of on the cusp here for the college football playoff. You're still probably in at 10-2, but you don't want to be 10-2. Like, it makes everything so much nicer for you going forward if you get this one under your belt. And what we spoke to with confidence for Carson Beck, think about the confidence for this team too. Because a lot of these individuals now, whether they would say it out loud or not, they remember what happened in Atlanta last year. They remember that feeling of falling short to Nick Saban's squad. To be able to get over that hump, to beat that team, even if it's just mentally, even just to feel like, okay, we got past that. I think that would do a lot for them. Because if you lose, like, you don't actually lose anything for your 2024 campaign. From what I just said, you can still make the college football playoff. You can still win the SEC. You can still win the national championship. But in the moment, it would be this gut punch of there was no Nick Saban. They lost a lot on defense. It's a new-looking outfit. We had our quarterback back. We got all these pieces from the portal. This was supposed to be our moment, and we didn't capitalize. We had it all in front of us. We didn't capitalize. So that feeling will be a gut punch in every single stretch. For Alabama now, if they win, think about the validation that would be for everyone that decided to stay at Alabama without Nick Saban. Like Jalen Milroe said this at SEC Media Days, and I thought it was really interesting. they asked him about essentially like, hey, who deserves more credit on your football team? And he said everybody, because all of us decided to come back and recommit to what we're doing right now in Tuscaloosa. And so to recommit to Alabama in a Saban-less regime and then to beat what has been arguably the best team in college football outside of Texas, like that would do a lot for them. And I think even we talk about validation, like that would be the belief that a talented team like them could really, I think, turn into fuel, turn into just rocket fuel, if you will. And I don't mean to keep going back to the Texas game last year, but I think we saw that be for Texas what it could be for Alabama in this game. And I get it's at home. It was on the road for Texas, but like you saw that team from Texas when they beat Alabama, already really talented, but when they actually put it into practice and had some skins on the wall to them, like it was, okay, hey, we can really make a run at this thing right now. And again, I think that sustained them when it got to points in the year where they didn't have their quarterback or they had to be up against it a little bit. Like that could be for Alabama what it was for Texas last year when they beat them. Now, same thing we said about Georgia is true for Alabama, breathing room. And it's not a super like insightful talking point, but it's absolutely true. There's a playoff element to this game with the sense that Alabama, you got to go to Tennessee, Missouri. We talk about the logo for Missouri mattering. Missouri will give Alabama a game. I'll just say that right now. Have to go to LSU, to Oklahoma. I don't know. Got to go to Norman. It's a good defense. Auburn, again, I don't know. Auburn, for whatever reason, lose to New Mexico State one game, and then they push you to 4th and 31 the next. I'm just saying. I would like to have a little bit of breathing room to have a 0 in the loss column whenever I play those games. Now, it's kind of fitting we're talking about this game this week because there's so much talk right now about NIL and the new college football and the Matthew Sluka story, and I'm not here to talk about necessarily what that is or isn't for college football, but I would say this. This game, to me, still embodies a lot of what I believe is right with college football. And I'm not saying the NIL or the transfer portal is wrong with college football, but if you object to that, if you're not happy with where that is right now, when this game kicks off, and we got Georgia trying to keep Bama from scoring on, call it 4th and 2, from the 2-yard line, like, you're not worried about NIL, you're not worried about the portal, you're not worried about realignment. Like, this is college football, 2 of the premier brands, 2 of the premier rosters, 2 of what I would say are the premier coaches and quarterbacks in this sport right now. And at that point, for however long this game lasts for those 4 quarters, like everything about college football will be right, regardless of who wins. And I can't wait to watch it. Who's the real winners in this game? Us, as college football fans, as cliche as that sounds and as corny as that sounds. That's how I feel about it. So let's move on here. Let's talk a little bit, a little QB carousel, if you will. Not QB carousel, but there's a lot made about who should start at different schools right now. It's some pretty visible schools. So I'm going to just give you my take on who should be quarterback 1 at a couple of these places. Now, to be clear, a couple of these schools have already named their starters. We'll give you our thoughts on it right now. For Auburn, they have not named a starter as of Wednesday at, call it, noon Eastern. Peyton Thorne is who I would roll with. And I understand he didn't look great against Cal. I understand he gets in the second half against Arkansas, and it's a pick. But, like, I keep going back to what I said when he got benched. There's a reason why you made him your starter in the fall. There's a reason why you didn't get somebody from the portal. What happened to those reasons? You say, well, JD, he threw 3 picks. Yes, against Cal, I see that. But do you think all of those interceptions are on him? Is that enough truly to just negate all those reasons that you had to make him the starter? In a more literal sense, like, I think Auburn needs to go back to running the football. I feel like we're all pretty well aligned on that thought. Because when you put more on the quarterback's plate, whether it's him or Hank Brown, they have proven, like, hey, we're going to give the football away here. In a small sample size, that's what they've proven to this point in the year. So with that being said, who gives you more on the ground? I think it's Peyton Thorne. And again, this is not an anti-Hank Brown take. I think Hank Brown is going to be phenomenal at Auburn for a long time. I think he has a really bright future ahead of him. And we saw even flashes of that when he played against New Mexico, and we saw flashes of that against Arkansas early on. But Peyton Thorne brings the mobile element to him. If you're trying to defend Auburn with Peyton Thorne at quarterback, you have to worry about the idea that he might actually tuck it and run around the edge on that RPO stuff. Also, we talk about the RPO game for Hugh Freeze. Peyton Thorne coming into this season, even with how bad it looked last year for him offensively, it's pretty solid in the RPO game. I think he was somewhere north of 70% when it comes to his completion percentage in the RPO stuff. So if you want to simplify, make it run heavy, make it just play within the RPO scheme, I think Peyton Thorne's your guy. My own take on it. For Texas A&M, I've said this a couple of times. I want to double down on it right now. I wouldn't be surprised if we triple down on this at some point during the week. Marcel Reed is your guy. And I understand that he doesn't have a ton of experience. I understand Connor Wegman was billed as a certain thing as a recruit. But listen, man, like you watch the offense under Connor Wegman and under Marcel Reed, it doesn't feel like it's all that comparable. And this is not me trying to dunk on Connor Wegman or any other quarterback throughout this discussion, but it looks a certain way with Marcel Reed that it doesn't look with Connor Wegman. And if you put them both out there, this is what I say a lot with these discussions, if you put them out there during a pro day, maybe Connor Wegman would look better. But in 11-on-11, with what the offense is under Colin Klein, with who you have at receiver, and with what Marcel Reed has shown to this point, I don't care if it's Florida, I don't care who it's against, he is your choice. And as a defense, I don't know what you're going to be doing offensively with Marcel Reed at quarterback. You can be more creative offensively. With Connor Wegman, I watched Notre Dame, as good as they are on the back end, play downhill in the box, play man coverage, and that was it. And your offense was anemic. Some of that's first game, some of that's Notre Dame's good defense, but I'm telling you now, with Marcel Reed back there, you can run quarterback draw, you can spread it out a little bit more, you can do some read option stuff, you can do more design quarterback runs. And I'll say this too, I think Marcel Reed is the high tide that lifts all boats here. Because with him in the backfield now, with the potential of him to run, that divides attention for the second and third level of that defense when it comes to defending those running backs as well. Like I might have a second or two extra hesitation as a linebacker, thinking Marcel Reed might have pulled it with my eyes in the wrong place. Le'Veon Moss is going north and south quick, fast, in a hurry. That's what he brings to the table. He empowers more of that running game for you and divides the attention for the defense. In the pass game, same deal. If I'm worried about Marcel Reed tucking and running, probably can't play as much man coverage. I probably have to play a little more zone, or I have to at least account for that. It's a thought for me. And when that happens, what does that mean? More space, in theory, for your receivers to separate and for explosive plays to happen. I'm not telling you Marcel Reed's a better thrower of the football than Connor Wegman. I don't know if that's true or not. But I think defensively, you have to play him in such a way that allows your receiving core to make more plays. Okay, and quite honestly, I don't think you have a ton of world beaters right now at receiver. So having a quarterback that can get them open with how he plays and his mobility, that might be it. That might just be it. So I think Marcel Reed, again, needs to be the guy for Texas A&M, and I feel very strongly about that. As of right now, there is no starter announced for their game against Arkansas, but if Marcel Reed's not the guy at A&M this year, I'm very curious to see how they go, how they would operate going forward offensively. Now, Michigan, they have named Alex Orji the starter going forward. I think it's the right call. But a lot of people after the USC game, seeing him throw for like 32 yards and seeing how one-dimensional the offense is, like, man, is that really sustainable? Is that really the way that we need to go for Michigan? The answer is that sustainable? No. Is that what they're going to be going forward to that extreme of a circumstance, run to pass? I'd be a little bit surprised. I think to some degree you have to have the pass game there to at least keep a defense honest. But I would take it a step further. Outside of Colston Loveland, who at Michigan needs to see the football? Like, hey, this guy's got to get 5 touches. I don't know that there's someone that jumps off the page to you there. Not saying there couldn't be someone that surges and makes their presence known at receiver, but like Michigan is very obvious with who they want to be. Run the football, make you say uncle. We're tougher than you. That's why we win. Alex Orji at quarterback doubles down on that principle. What we said about Marcel Reed is true about Alex Orji. He divides the attention with who could be running the football. Benefit for Michigan. Benefit for Mullings. Benefit for Edwards. Allows them to stay ahead of the sticks. All those things are true. Now, again, I think there has to be an Alex Orji 2.0, and Sharon Moore alluded to that a little bit, but I think when it comes to what you have within that roster, you beat USC, and USC's got problems defensively. They're still, working to adjust from last year. But you beat USC with a receiver that was your leading receiver with 1 catch for 10 yards. I believe that was your tight end. And that was good enough to win. So is it sustainable? Probably not, but he is the right guy for you with what you have on this offense. Now, I actually didn't even know we had to address this, but for Oklahoma, it's absolutely Michael Hawkins Jr. And I put out a take yesterday on Twitter and got some kickback from the folks on Sooner Twitter for it. Said Michael Hawkins Jr., with what you have offensively, with what you don't have on the offensive line, is the correct choice. I said I think Jackson Arnold. Do you know what he is as a quarterback just yet? I don't think so, because your sack rate currently is at 9%. So Jackson Arnold, same thing. He could end up being a 5-star quarterback and have 5-star success somewhere else, but with the receiver room dinged up and with your offensive line not being super dialed in right now, yeah, I think you need a quarterback who can make something happen with his legs and get you out of trouble. And the pushback I got on that was, hey, listen, he had 3 turnovers against Tennessee. Show me which one of those was due to the offensive line struggling. And my point is, like, the thing I would respond to that is, like, that's not actually the point of any of this. Like, if you think Jackson Arnold got benched because of those 3 turnovers, you're incorrect. You're absolutely incorrect. That might have been the straw that broke the camel's back, but that wasn't the point. The point was your offense is not able to run the football. The point is your offense is not able to move the football. Look at the Houston game. Look at that game against Tennessee. Yes, he made some poor decisions. That was probably a catalyst, but that wasn't the reason. The reason was because you're struggling to find ways to move the football. Did Jackson Arnold make poor decisions? 100%. If Michael Hawkins Jr. also makes poor decisions, then yeah, probably we got more issues to discuss there. But Michael Hawkins Jr., I think me and the Oklahoma fan base are aligned here, gives you the best chance to win going forward, gives you the best chance to score points going forward. Because for Jackson Arnold now, I think when you look at what his career is going to be, it's hard for me to have 5 games of data on him and say, yep, we're out on him as a 5-star quarterback. Oklahoma fans, we talked all offseason about how good he could be. We also, on this show, said multiple times, if you can't protect him, it's going to be a difficult path. Going back to those turnovers, if we really want to harp on that here. When it comes to Jackson Arnold, you don't think maybe your decision-making would be impacted a little bit if you're getting sacked 9% of the time? You don't think maybe that would play a factor in terms of the decisions that you end up making, the ghost that you see, your internal shot clock? I think it would. So no, did all 3 of those turnovers have to do with the offensive line struggling? No, of course not. There's the lateral where he had a little bit of pressure in his face, and if you want to have a discussion about that one, we totally can. But again, I think overall, the offensive line and what you don't have makes Michael Hawkins Jr. the best option to move the football for you. We saw it against Tennessee, and I think we're going to see it here going forward against Auburn. Also, y'all, I picked Oklahoma to beat Auburn. I don't know why Sooner Twitter's got an issue with me, but I love y'all still. No matter how much you push me away, I still love you, all right? Do not get it twisted. So those are the individuals that I think need to be quarterback 1 for their respective schools. And again, both Alex Orji and Michael Hawkins Jr., as of right now, are both the starters going forward. So give me your thoughts now. Get at me on Instagram and on Twitter, at JD Piquel, and let me know who you think needs to be the guy at those respective schools, or even other schools, if you have other schools you want to talk about there. I see the live chat popping up and saying, is it time for a little pivot at Florida State? If they have troubles with SMU, they go to SMU, by the way, now. That'll be a very interesting discussion. Also, here's a massive, massive sleeper. Keep an eye on Notre Dame. I don't have any intel, but again, I said I think there's symptoms there, and when there's symptoms, I think someone's sick. And the Notre Dame offense, to me, looks a little bit sick right now. Not saying it should happen. I'm just saying keep an eye on that situation because, I don't know, crazier things have happened. Hard Count brought to you today by our friends over at Rowback. Now, y'all know how much I love Rowback. Every time you tune into a story of mine on Instagram on Friday when we're doing like our question and answer sessions we do on there every Friday during the season, I'm wearing a Rowback t-shirt. I'm wearing a Rowback hoodie. I've worn many a Rowback polo in my life, especially on a hot game day. Rowback, moisture wicking technology, going to keep you cool throughout an entire game day. And also, as moving to hoodie season here in the fall, it's going to make sure that you stay warm throughout those tailgates as well with the Rowback hoodies. Also, Rowback, some everyday shorts, perfect pairing. Comfortable, elastic waistband, great fabric that is made to stretch. Rowback now also been leading the NIL charge, having signed partnerships with college stars Jalen Milroe, Cade Klubnik, Caleb Downs. Cade Klubnik was last year, I believe. Caleb Downs, among others. They're the go-to brand for college athletes. Use code JD on rowback.com for a generous 20% off all new customers through the end of this week. That's spelled RHOBACK.com. That's 20% off all performance polos, shorts, and more with code JD. I believe Cade Klubnik is still a Rowback athlete. Don't quote me on that, but that's my pulse from what I can gather. Hey, a lot going on right now in the college football sphere. A lot of things to talk about. See someone in the live chat saying, explain the new helmet logo. All right, so this is kind of the die-hard part of this show, so we'll do it right now. So this right here is a gift from our friends at Shut. Hooked us up, the visor from Next Round. Great folks. They sent it to us. We got together with Preston Battle, who does great work as well on helmets, and we kind of designed this together. The logo now was drawn by one of my best friends in the world, Davis Brock. The logo now, people ask, hey, the juice box, what's up with that? The sailor hat, pretty simple answer there. Throughout my college career, throughout my life, it's been a juice guy. Like, I am a big believer that energy, effort, passion will get you 90% of the way. Like, if you're just invested, if you just bring your best self to the table, you bring some energy, whether you really got it or not, like, you're going to eventually break through that wall and get to where you want to go. All right? Like, it doesn't take any talent now to bring energy or a good attitude. So that's what I always say. Energy, effort, those are things you can control. Take no talent, major separator. So same thing that we carry with us here on this show. Energy, effort, passion, that's the deal. The Sailor helmet now, I love the Sailor like logos you see, the old school Auburn logo has it, Baylor logo has it, North Carolina has it. Like, the Sailor logo to me is just so sick and so just unique and specific to college sports and college football. So when I asked my friend to draw it, he's like, yeah, I got you, and made it look awesome. So yeah, we're super grateful for Shut to make this come to life, and really excited to have it on the desk now. And we also, something we rock with, and the emoji we use quite a bit. So that's kind of the story behind the juice and the juice logo. But we appreciate y'all tuning into this program. We appreciate y'all bringing your energy, your effort, your juice to the table here every single live show and being dialed in. Make sure you're subscribed, whether it be on the podcast feed or whether it be on the YouTube channel. Just want y'all a part of this. The best way to be a part of this is by being subscribed and by following me on the social channels at JD Piquel on Twitter and on Instagram. Nick Break on the ones and twos. For myself, JD Piquel, we appreciate y'all. We love y'all. We're going to keep this party rolling. We will see y'all next time.